My husband broke my leg because I refused to give his mother the 3 million rubles I had won in the lottery. The next day, when he happily went to the ATM to withdraw his salary, he was horrified by what he saw on the screen. But before I continue, I want to ask you to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you, and enjoy listening. Valentina was standing in front of the mirror in the hallway, straightening the collar of her white blouse, when she heard a rustling sound in the pocket of her old coat. She reached in almost automatically and found a crumpled piece of paper. It was a lottery ticket, completely forgotten, bought 3 months ago at a small kiosk near her workplace with spare change from buying bread. The apartment was quiet. Her husband, Gennady, had gone to visit his mother, and her son, Artyom, was hanging out at his friend's place. Valentina unfolded the wrinkled ticket and turned on the TV, just in time for the lottery drawing program. The numbers flashed quickly across the screen, but she managed to catch a familiar combination. Her heart skipped a beat. 3 million rubles. That's exactly what the screen showed, matching the numbers on her ticket. She read the numbers again and again, twice, 3 times. Everything matched perfectly. At 42 years old, she had won more than the price of the ticket itself for the first time in her life. Her hands were shaking as she dialed the lottery hotline. The operator, a polite young woman, confirmed, "The win is valid. You need to come to the office with your passport and the ticket." Carefully, Valentina put the ticket in a safe hidden behind a wardrobe in the bedroom. She decided not to tell anyone about it, at least not yet. Valentina had been working as an accountant at a small trading company for 8 years. Her salary was modest but steady. She and Gennady had met at university and married during their 3rd year. He had started working as a construction foreman, always busy counting other people's money. Life had been predictable and calm, until Gennady's mother, Claudia Markovna, stormed into their lives. The woman had appeared 5 years ago, after the death of her husband, and it seemed like her main goal in life was to control every step her son and his family took. She demanded monthly reports on their spending, criticized Valentina's purchases, and constantly reminded her that, in her day, wives were much more economical. Gennady didn't resist his mother. He believed that this was just her way of showing care. The next day, Valentina took a day off from work and went to the lottery office. The process turned out to be long and tedious, checking documents, getting certificates, signing papers. By the evening, 3 million rubles had been deposited into her account after taxes were deducted. The sum felt unreal. But when she returned home, she was met with a surprise. Sitting at the kitchen table were Gennady and his mother, and between them lay a printed bank check showing the amount that had been credited. "Where did you get this money?" her husband asked, without looking up from the paper. Valentina realized immediately that the secret was out. Claudia Markovna worked at the same bank where the family had their accounts, and she had clearly overstepped her authority, keeping track of other people's transactions. "I won the lottery," Valentina said. "I bought the ticket 3 months ago. 3 million rubles. Her mother-in-law threw up her hands in excitement. "My God, what happiness. Janachka, now we can finally update my apartment. I've already spotted a nice 2-bedroom in a new neighborhood." Valentina was stunned. The woman spoke as if the money already belonged to her. "Mom, wait," Valentina said. "This is my winnings." "Well, so what? We are family. And I've spent so many years helping you, raising your child, buying groceries. It's time for me to get some help too," Claudia said. The first dramatic turn hit like a thunderclap. Claudia Markovna pulled a folder of documents from her bag and placed it on the table. "I've already spoken with a real estate agent. Here's a list of apartments that suit us. Tomorrow, we're going to view them." Valentina picked up the folder and flipped through it. Every apartment listed cost between 2 and 3 million rubles. Her mother-in-law planned to spend the entire lottery winnings. "Claudia Markovna, these are my money. I won them," Valentina protested. "They are family money since you were married to my son. And besides, who told you to buy the ticket?" "I told you lotteries sometimes win," her mother-in-law said matter-of-factly. Valentina felt a knot in her stomach. Her hard-earned win was suddenly being treated as if it belonged to someone else. And she realized this was only the beginning of a long and difficult struggle over her own money. Valentina remembered that conversation. Indeed, her mother-in-law had once casually mentioned that they should buy lottery tickets more often. You never know, you might get lucky. But it had been just a general suggestion for everyone, not a specific instruction for her. Gennady, say something, Valentina urged, hoping her husband would back her up. He looked unsure, first at his mother, then at his wife. Well, Mom is right that family sticks together, and she really does need a better apartment, he said slowly. Yes, she does need a new place, but not with my lottery winnings, Valentina replied firmly. Klavdia Markovna pursed her lips. That was always the way. A stranger comes into the family and immediately starts being greedy. In our time, daughters-in-law respected their mothers-in-law, she muttered under her breath. Valentina stood up from the table. I'm tired after a long day. We'll talk about this later. As she walked to the bedroom, she could hear whispers from the kitchen. Her mother-in-law was quietly persuading her son, and he nodded in agreement. The next few days were tense and stressful. Klavdia Markovna called every morning and every evening, asking when they were going to see the apartments. Gennady became quiet and thoughtful, clearly torn between his wife and his mother. Meanwhile, Valentina was thinking about how she wanted to use the money. She could pay off the mortgage on their two-bedroom apartment, save for her son's education, or take the whole family on a vacation abroad. There were many plans, but none included buying an apartment for her mother-in-law. A week later, the second dramatic turn happened. Valentina went to the bank to withdraw money for groceries and discovered that over the past 2 years, regular sums of 10,000 to 15,000 rubles had been withdrawn from their joint account. These transactions were done through a power of attorney she had never signed. At the bank, she was told that the power of attorney had been issued in the name of Gennady Krechetov. He had the right to manage the family's funds. Valentina demanded a printout of all transactions over the past 2 years. The numbers shocked her. Her husband had secretly been giving more than 100,000 rubles to his mother every year. That evening, she spread out all the printouts in front of Gennady. Explain yourself, Valentina demanded. Gennady's face turned red, and he looked away. Mom asked for help. Her pension is small, he mumbled. For 2 years you've been stealing from the family. And when I asked why money was missing, you said our salaries were too small. I wasn't stealing. I was helping my own mother, he said softly. But at my expense. Without my knowledge, Valentina snapped. She gathered up the papers and locked herself in the study. The situation was becoming clearer. Gennady had long ago turned into an obedient son, someone who thought it was normal to spend the family's money on his mother. Now that a large lottery win had appeared, he probably expected his wife to share it with Klavdia Markovna. But Valentina had no intention of sharing. The next day, her mother-in-law arrived with a new folder of documents. This time, she brought preliminary sales agreements for 3 different apartments. Pick any one. I'm not picky, she said. I won't pick any, Valentina replied firmly. The money is for my family. For what other family? Her mother-in-law demanded. We are the family, my husband, my son, and me. You are not part of my family. Klavdia Markovna went pale with rage. How dare you? I am Gennady's mother. And what of it? That doesn't give you the right to my winnings, Valentina said firmly. Her mother-in-law stood up sharply and walked to the phone. She dialed her son at work. Dinochka, your wife has completely lost her mind. Come home immediately. An hour later, Gennady stormed into the apartment with a dark expression. Behind him came his mother, looking triumphant. Valentina, we need to talk, Gennady said. Go ahead, she replied, her voice steady. Mom is right. She has spent her whole life helping us, raising Artyom. It's time we thanked her, with 3 million rubles, at least part of it, by buying her an apartment. Valentina realized her husband had fully sided with his mother. Arguing was pointless. She silently went to the bedroom and locked the door. Behind it, she could hear excited voices. Klavdia Markovna was planning how to arrange her new apartment, and Gennady was agreeing and nodding along. They were talking about Valentina in the third person, as if she were an object to be controlled, something that had to obey their decisions. A few days later, the third dramatic turn happened, one that finally opened Valentina's eyes to the real situation. She came home from work earlier than usual and heard voices in the kitchen. Gennady was on the phone with a construction crew, discussing the remodeling of an apartment for his mother. On the table lay a detailed budget, a furniture catalog, and a list of finishing materials. Yes, the money will be there next week. My wife has already agreed, Gennady said into the phone. Valentina stepped into the kitchen, her heart pounding. I didn't agree to anything, she said firmly. Gennady hurriedly hung up the phone. Val, why are you making a scene? Mom is waiting. The workers are ready to start. Then let her wait. And let the workers find other clients, Valentina shot back. But I already gave my word, Gennady said, frustration in his voice. You gave your word, using my money. Without my permission, she snapped. Her husband looked at her, confused. I thought you'd change your mind. I won't change my mind. And if you make another decision about my winnings without me, we will have a serious talk, Valentina said, her voice cold and steady. Gennady frowned. Don't threaten me, Valentina. I'm your husband, not your property. The conflict was escalating. Claudia Markovna now called several times a day, demanding that the apartment issue be resolved immediately. Gennady grew increasingly irritated and began openly expressing his dissatisfaction with his wife. Valentina felt as if the ground was slipping from beneath her feet. The family she had built over 18 years was cracking at the seams because of money that was supposed to bring joy. Her husband and mother-in-law had united against her, calling her greedy and selfish. But she had no intention of backing down. The winnings were hers, and she would spend them as she saw fit. The atmosphere in the house grew more tense with each passing day. Gennady stopped speaking to her, answering only with short, one-word responses. Claudia Markovna looked at her with open hatred whenever they met. Valentina realized that the struggle over her money had become a struggle for her family, her home, and her sense of control. But she was determined. She would not give in, no matter how much pressure came from the people she had once trusted. Even her son, Artyom, noticed the changes at home and asked what was happening with his parents. Valentina knew that serious challenges lay ahead, but for now, she felt ready to face them. Monday began with an unexpected call from her neighbor, Tamara Ivanovna. The woman usually kept her greetings polite and brief in the hallway, but this time she invited Valentina over for tea. I have guests visiting from the village, Tamara said warmly. I'd like you to meet some good people. Valentina was surprised by the sudden friendliness, but agreed to go. At the neighbor's apartment, 3 elderly women were sitting at a neatly set table, wearing clean headscarves and well-kept coats. The conversation quickly turned to family matters. Well, in our village, Maria Petrovna is such a clever woman, one of the guests said. Her son bought her an apartment in the city as soon as he had the money. He says his mother spent her whole life on them. Now, it's their turn to give back. The second woman nodded. Exactly. You have to honor your parents. We didn't raise our children for ourselves. We raised them so they would help us in old age. The third woman added with a knowing nod, and then there are daughters-in-law who would take the last piece of bread from their mother-in-law. They only spend money on themselves. Valentina realized she had walked right into a cleverly organized trap. Tamara Ivanovna smiled awkwardly, clearly uncomfortable with the situation, but she said nothing. The guests had been sent by Claudia Markovna to make Valentina feel guilty. Sorry, I have to go, Valentina said, standing up from the table. Oh, you're leaving already? We wanted to talk to you about family values, one of the women protested. Later, as Valentina walked away from her neighbor's apartment, she immediately understood the full scale of her mother-in-law's operation. By the mailboxes, the building's concierge, Mina Stepanovna, was chatting animatedly with a resident from apartment 7. Valentina heard her say, "It's good when the younger generation remembers their parents. Otherwise, some people get rich and start acting proud." Valentina felt the pressure closing in. Her mother-in-law had carefully built a network of influence, spreading her ideas about duty and gratitude, and she was determined to make Valentina comply. But Valentina also felt a spark of determination. She realized she needed to be even stronger and more careful. The battle for her winnings and for her family was far from over. The woman gave Valentina a meaningful look and then deliberately turned away. The fourth dramatic turn was unfolding with frightening precision. Claudia Markovna had activated an entire network of acquaintances, turning ordinary neighbors into instruments of pressure. By the end of the week, Valentina was met with judging looks everywhere, in the grocery store, the pharmacy, even at the clinic. The general practitioner she had visited for a headache suddenly began lecturing her on the importance of family traditions. "You know," the doctor said, "there are so few people in our society who remember their duties to the older generation, especially when they have the means to help financially." The pharmacist, while giving her medication for stress, remarked, "You look tense. Probably stress from a guilty conscience, right?" Even a cashier in the vegetable section of the supermarket sighed as she weighed some tomatoes. "Oh, my friend's daughter-in-law is such a golden girl," she said. As soon as she inherited money, the first thing she did was buy her mother-in-law an apartment. She said we treated her like our own daughter. Valentina began to realize that a full-scale information attack had been launched against her. Claudia Markovna was using her position as a bank employee and her years of connections to create an atmosphere of universal judgment. The situation at home was no better. Gennady started coming home later than usual, claiming urgent work at construction sites. Valentina suspected he was just avoiding any conflict. Her son, Artyom, looked increasingly sad, sensing the tension between his parents. 2 weeks later, the fifth dramatic turn struck like a thunderbolt. Valentina discovered that money had begun disappearing from the family budget. At first, it was small amounts, 500,000 rubles, but soon the missing sums grew larger. Gennady offered various explanations. The money had been stolen from a locker, or he had lost his wallet on the bus, or he had to urgently lend money to a colleague. "In 1 month, you lost 12,000 rubles, Valentina said, carefully calculating. "That's not a loss, it's sabotage," she added, her voice tight with anger. "Don't make things up," Gennady replied. "It's just bad luck," he added quickly, as if that explained everything. Valentina knew better. It wasn't bad luck. It was a calculated attempt to take control of her winnings, to isolate her, and to undermine her authority in her own home. And with every passing day, the pressure grew, outside and inside the house. Her family, her son, even her own husband seemed to turn against her, while she had to hold her ground and protect what was rightfully hers. Bad luck, huh? Or are you deliberately creating financial problems so that I'll have to spend the lottery winnings? Valentina asked sharply. Gennady turned red. He had been caught. "Ridiculous," he said quickly. "Then explain why the money I had set aside for the utility bills disappeared," Valentina pressed. "What money?" Gennady asked, genuinely confused. "The money in the envelope in the dresser. I hid it on purpose," she said, holding up her hands. Her husband blinked, unsure what to say. "I don't know, maybe you forgot where you put it," he offered weakly. Valentina silently showed him the empty envelope. Gennady looked away. The strategy was obvious. Create financial difficulties to force his wife to spend her lottery winnings on everyday needs. Then, of course, it would be easy to suggest helping his mother as well. Valentina decided she would no longer leave cash at home. She transferred all their savings to a separate account that only she could access. Claudia Markovna reacted with fury. "You've turned into a real miser. You don't even trust your husband," she shouted. "And why should I trust him?" Valentina replied calmly. "Because he steals money from the family budget," her mother-in-law asked, outraged. "He doesn't steal," Valentina corrected. "He just manages it." "He's the head of the family," Claudia insisted. "The head of a family who secretly funds his mother at the expense of his wife and child." Valentina shot back. Her mother-in-law's face turned crimson with anger. "How dare you say that? I am his mother. And what right does that give you to rob our family?" After that conversation, the war entered an open stage. Klavdia Markovna mobilized all her relatives and acquaintances. Valentina began receiving calls from distant aunts, cousins, and even neighbors from the old communal apartment where Gennady had once lived. Every conversation had the same theme: the importance of caring for elderly parents and how shameful it was to be an ungrateful daughter-in-law. Problems even followed her to work. Her company director, Oleg Vladimirovich, called her into his office. "I have information about your lottery winnings," he said, his voice serious. Valentina realized the battle had gone far beyond her home. Her mother-in-law was using every possible connection, every influence, to pressure her from all sides. And yet, despite the tension and the constant attacks, Valentina felt a fierce determination building inside her. She would not give up her winnings, not now, not ever. "And so? Nothing special," Gennady said casually. "Just know that wealth changes a person a lot. I hope you stay the same." Valentina realized that rumors about her supposed greed and coldness had reached her workplace. Her colleagues had started treating her more coolly. In the break room, where she sometimes went for tea from the vending machine, conversations often stopped the moment she entered. Even her longtime friend, the secretary Shaluta, with whom she had been close for 5 years, suddenly became coldly polite. Valentina suspected that Klavdia Markovna was using her banking connections to spread her version of events, the one that made her look generous and Valentina selfish. In a small town, news spread quickly, especially news about money. A month later, the sixth dramatic turn left Valentina completely stunned. When she returned home from work, she found a box in the hallway full of furniture and construction materials. Gennady was smiling as he arranged documents on the kitchen table. "What is this?" Valentina asked. "Materials for Mom's apartment," he said cheerfully. "On whose money?" she demanded. They agreed to a payment plan. "We'll pay in installments," he replied. Valentina took the invoices and studied the numbers. The total came to 200,000 rubles. The first payment of 50,000 had already been made. "Where did you get 50,000? She asked, her voice trembling. "I took a bank loan," he said, hesitating. "Against what?" she pressed. He faltered. "Against our apartment." Valentina felt the ground slip from beneath her feet. Her husband had mortgaged their home to buy building materials for his mother. "Are you insane? How could you mortgage our apartment without my permission?" she shouted. "No permission was needed. I'm the owner," Gennady said calmly. "And what if we can't pay it back?" "We will," he replied. "You have the money." The trap had snapped shut. Now, to avoid losing their home, Valentina would have to spend her lottery winnings to pay off the loan her husband had taken for his mother. "You're a scoundrel," she whispered. "I'm a caring son and husband trying to keep peace in the family," Gennady said defensively. "What peace? You've put us on the brink of bankruptcy," she said angrily. Gennady shrugged. "It's an easy problem to solve." Valentina realized that her life had been turned upside down. The money that was supposed to bring her freedom and security was now being used to maintain someone else's comfort, and she was being forced to choose between her own financial safety and giving in to her mother-in-law's schemes. "Just spend part of the winnings and everything will be fine," Gennady said, as if it were the simplest solution in the world. Valentina understood immediately that this was a carefully planned operation. Her husband and mother-in-law had thought it all through in advance. They had created a scenario where she would feel forced to comply, making refusal seem impossible. But they had seriously underestimated her character. The next day, Valentina went to see a lawyer. She discovered that technically, her husband did have the right to mortgage the apartment. If the ownership shares are not officially separated, the consent of the other owner is not required. Gennady had acted within the law, but the lawyer explained there was still a way to challenge the loan agreement. If you can prove that the loan was taken not for the family's benefit, but for a third party, the lawyer said, you may be able to cancel it. But it could take 3 or 4 months, or maybe longer. Time was not on her side. Klavdia Markovna had already ordered the workers, drawn up a renovation schedule, and even chosen the furniture. She acted as if the apartment had already been bought with her daughter-in-law's money. Valentina felt the walls closing in around her. On one side was the pressure of public judgment and relatives' disapproval. On the other side was her husband's financial maneuver, putting their home at risk. And on top of it all were her mother-in-law's constant demands, as if she had the right to control someone else's money. At work, her colleagues began gossiping openly behind her back. In the break room, the secretary casually let slip, "I heard about that woman who won the lottery and became so full of herself." Marina Sergeyevna from accounting added, "She didn't even want to help her mother-in-law." Valentina knew they were talking about her. The story was growing with every retelling, turning into a kind of urban legend about a greedy daughter-in-law. Even in the stores, the salespeople treated her politely, but coldly. At the children's playground, where she was walking with her friend's little niece, other mothers deliberately moved their kids away from her. Klavdia Markovna reveled in it all. She smiled triumphantly, convinced that her plan had worked perfectly. But Valentina, despite the isolation, the gossip, and the pressure, felt a spark of determination. She realized she couldn't let them dictate her life or her money. She would find a way to protect her winnings and her family, no matter what. Klavdia Markovna had created an atmosphere of isolation around Valentina, hoping to break her will. But it had the opposite effect. The more they pressured her, the stronger Valentina resisted. She stopped justifying herself to the neighbors, ignored the sideways glances in stores, and paid no attention to the hints and gossip from her colleagues. At home, the atmosphere became even heavier. Gennady openly showed his anger toward his wife, blaming her for all the family problems. He stopped helping around the house, came home late, and often returned drunk. Their son, Artyom, ran back and forth between them, confused and scared, not understanding the reasons behind the conflict. Valentina tried to shield him from the details, but the tension in the house was impossible to hide. "Mom, Dad said we have a lot of money now. Then why is everyone so angry?" Artyom asked one evening, his young face full of worry. "Money doesn't always bring happiness, son," Valentina said softly. "Then what's the point of having it?" he asked, puzzled. Valentina didn't know how to answer. The lottery winnings, which were supposed to be a gift from fate, had turned into a source of endless conflict and stress. Meanwhile, Klavdia Markovna had opened a new front in her campaign. She started bringing real estate agents, designers, and furniture store representatives into their home. "Me, my daughter-in-law," she said proudly. "She will be paying for my renovation." Valentina, feeling embarrassed every time, explained politely to the confused professionals that she had not placed any orders and had no intention of paying for anything. Her mother-in-law would fly into a rage at these moments. "You're embarrassing me in front of people," Klavdia would shout. "No," Valentina replied calmly. "You're embarrassing yourself by telling strangers about my money. It's not your money, it's family money, my money, and I will spend it as I see fit." In these situations, Gennady usually sided with his mother. "Valentina, she's old. She needs help," he would say. "Helping someone means asking for help," Valentina answered firmly, not presenting facts as if I have no choice. Day by day, the tension in the house grew, but so did Valentina's resolve. The more they tried to control her, the more determined she became to protect her money and her family from manipulation. She wasn't just spending the money, she was planning. "Planning? Is that so bad?" Gennady asked. "Yes, bad," Valentina replied firmly. "She's planning with my money, without my involvement." The conflict had reached a deadlock. Nobody wanted to give in. Klavdia Markovna continued to pressure her through relatives and acquaintances. Gennady sabotaged the family budget, creating financial problems. Valentina stubbornly refused to spend any of her lottery winnings on her mother-in-law. By the end of the second month, the situation had reached a critical point. The first loan payment on the mortgage Gennady had taken against their apartment was coming due. Klavdia Markovna called every day, demanding an immediate decision about the apartment. The workers she had hired were waiting for the advance payment and threatened to take other clients. The suppliers of construction materials demanded the next installment in the payment plan. Gennady became increasingly nervous and aggressive. "Because of your stubbornness, we could lose our apartment," he shouted. "No, because of your schemes," Valentina replied. I was trying to find a solution, he yelled. You've trapped us in this situation, she said, her voice steady. Valentina knew the climax was near. Pressure came from every side, but she still refused to give in. The winnings were hers, and no one would force her to spend the money against her will, even if it meant risking her family. On that February morning, Valentina was greeted by a freezing wind and a sense of unease. For a week, tense silence had filled the house. Gennady avoided conversations, giving only one-word answers. Klavdia Markovna called twice a day, each time raising her voice and issuing ultimatums. The mortgage payment on the apartment would be due in just 5 days, 28,000 rubles a month for 3 years. A sum that could easily destroy their financial stability. Valentina understood perfectly. If she gave in now, the conflict would end, but it would mean surrendering to her mother-in-law and husband. If she didn't, the confrontation would explode into a full-scale war. And she had no intention of surrendering. At work, colleagues openly gossiped behind her back. Even her director, Oleg Vladimirovich, started treating her with distant formality, as if afraid of dealing with a problem employee. Valentina realized the pressure had reached its peak. All eyes were on her, and every decision she made in the next few days could change her life. But one thing was certain. She would not give up her winnings. No one could make her compromise her independence, no matter how hard they tried. The secretary, Luda, deliberately ignored her. And the chief accountant, Nina Stepanovna, would shake her head knowingly every time she saw her. The atmosphere of public judgment around Valentina was becoming heavier and heavier. In the store, the saleswomen served her with exaggerated politeness, but their smiles were cold, distant. At the bus stop, familiar neighbors turned away as soon as they noticed her. Even the local police officer, Pyotr Ivanovich, who greeted her near the building, shook his head and said with a sigh, Valentina Mikhailovna, I didn't expect this from you. Klavdia Markovna had masterfully created a bubble of isolation around her daughter-in-law. She used every connection she had, from banking colleagues to neighbors on the same stairwell. The story of the greedy daughter-in-law who refused to help her elderly mother-in-law grew with every retelling, adding more details and transforming into a kind of urban legend. At home, Gennady grew increasingly gloomy and irritable. He openly expressed his dissatisfaction with his wife, blaming her for destroying the peace of the family. Your mother is right, he said during evenings, his voice heavy. You've changed. The money has gone to your head. It's not the money that changed me, Valentina replied quietly. It's your behavior that opened my eyes. Opened your eyes to what? Gennady asked sharply. To the fact that for you, your mother is more important than your wife, she said. He retorted, My mother gave me life. You're just a wife. Those words cut Valentina deeply. For 18 years of marriage, she had believed she had built a real family with Gennady. Now, she realized she was merely a wife, someone who was expected to obey her mother-in-law's will. On Friday evening, the 7th dramatic turn took place, marking the beginning of a real disaster. Valentina returned from work later than usual. The streets were dark, the February wind biting at her face. She sensed something was off even before opening the door. The tension in the apartment had reached a new level. Every step, every glance inside that home had become charged with threat, accusation, and control. Valentina knew that the coming hours would test her strength like never before. Valentina had stayed late at work, finishing the quarterly report, which required extra care and attention. The numbers had to be perfect, and she had lost track of time. As she climbed the stairs to her apartment, she heard loud voices coming from inside. Her heart sank. Something felt wrong. When she opened the door, she saw an unpleasant scene in the hallway. At the kitchen table sat Gennady, Klavdia Markovna, and 2 unfamiliar men in sharp suits. In front of them were neatly arranged documents, fountain pens, and official stamps. Klavdia Markovna rose from her chair as Valentina entered, greeting her with a poisonous smile. We've been waiting for you, she said. One of the men introduced himself. I am Konstantin Petrovich Shivalov, the notary. The other man spoke, And I am Anatoly Semyonovich Rogozin, a real estate appraiser. Valentina immediately realized she had walked into a carefully prepared trap. We are here to formalize the gift transfer of monetary funds, the notary explained politely. Your husband and his mother have prepared all the necessary documents. A gift transfer? What gift? I am not giving anything, Valentina said, her voice rising. But your husband assured us this is a family decision, the notary added. Valentina turned to look at Gennady. He was sitting there, eyes fixed on the table, refusing to meet her gaze. There was no family decision. Klavdia Markovna jumped to her feet. Stop pretending. We all agreed on this, she shouted. No one agreed with you, Valentina said firmly. Your husband told us you agreed, Klavdia Markovna accused. Gennady had lied. The notary cleared his throat awkwardly. I'm sorry, but without the written consent of all parties, this document cannot be formalized. There will be no consent, Valentina said firmly, her voice calm but unwavering. Klavdia Markovna's face turned red with rage. Then we will take what belongs to us by right, money earned through shared effort. No, Valentina said sharply. The money was won on my ticket, through my luck. It is not family money. It was my time, my effort, my chance. Luck is not a family possession. The argument flared. Voices rose. Words collided like thunder. Seeing the tension rise, the notary and the appraiser quickly gathered their papers. We apologize for the disturbance, the notary said, bowing slightly, and they left. Valentina was left alone with her husband and her mother-in-law. The air was thick with anger and silence, each of them waiting, measuring the next word, the next move. Valentina felt a surge of determination. She had walked into their trap, and now she would not be trapped. This is the last time I'm asking, Klavdia Markovna, Valentina said, her voice quiet but full of warning. Will you take the money willingly, or will you try to take it by force? No one is going to force me into anything, her mother-in-law snapped. We'll see about that, Valentina replied, her tone icy. Klavdia Markovna turned to leave, but at the door, she glanced back. Gennady, she said, her voice sharp and commanding, show this woman who really runs this house, or you'll stay under her thumb forever. When the door closed behind her, the apartment seemed to shrink around Valentina. The air felt thick and suffocating. Gennady stood there, staring at his wife with an expression she had never seen before. In his eyes were anger, hurt, and a dangerous determination. Valentina, he said, his voice low, I can't take this anymore. Take what? She asked, her voice steady. Your disrespect for my family, for the family that wants to rob me. The family that gave me life and raised me. And what did I give you? Valentina shot back. 18 years of marriage, a son, a home. Yes, but my mother gave more, he said, and those words felt like a verdict. In that moment, Valentina realized she had always come second in his life, behind his mother. Where is the money? Gennady demanded, stepping toward her. In the bank, she said. And the card? With me, she replied. Give me the card. I won't. You will. Never. Gennady's fists clenched. Valentina saw something terrifying in his face. He looked ready to use force. Gennady, stop, she warned, her voice trembling. I will stop, he said, but his eyes were hard. You're tearing my family apart. Your mother is tearing our family apart, he shot back. She only wants justice, he said suddenly, stepping closer. Valentina instinctively moved back, but she tripped on the threshold between the hallway and the kitchen. Gennady reached for her handbag. She jerked her hand away. He pushed her, trying to grab it. Valentina fell, hitting her left leg against the metal threshold. Pain shot through her like a hot knife. She screamed. Gennady froze, staring at his wife, writhing in pain. Valia, what happened? He asked, panic in his voice. My leg, she gasped. She could barely speak. I think it's broken. At that exact moment, the doorbell rang. Gennady ran to answer it. On the doorstep stood their neighbors, Tamara Ivanovna and Viktor Petrovich. They had been coming home from work when they heard the scream. Valentina lay on the floor, gripping her leg, while the two neighbors looked on in shock. The situation had spiraled out of control, and there was no turning back now. What happened? We heard a scream. Tamara Ivanovna exclaimed as she stepped into the apartment with Viktor Petrovich. My wife, she fell badly, hurt her leg, Gennady muttered, trying to sound calm but clearly shaken. The neighbors moved closer and saw Valentina lying on the hallway floor. She looked pale, almost chalk-white. Her left leg was twisted at an unnatural angle, and her face was contorted in pain. Oh my God! We need to call an ambulance, Tamara Ivanovna cried, rushing to her side. I already called. Gennady lied, his voice tight. Viktor Petrovich scanned the scene carefully. The hallway was a mess. Items scattered from her handbag, a small stool knocked over, marks on the floor that suggested a struggle. What happened here? Was there a fight? He asked, frowning. No, she just fell badly, Gennady replied, trying to downplay it. Valentina struggled to lift her head and looked at the neighbors, with pain in her eyes. He pushed me, she whispered, barely audible. He tried to take my bank card. Tamara Ivanovna and Viktor exchanged glances, their expressions growing serious. Excuse me, what did you say? Tamara asked gently but firmly. My husband, he pushed me. Tried to forcefully take my money, Valentina repeated, her voice shaking. Gennady's face turned pale. Valia, what are you saying? You're in shock from the pain, he stammered. I'm telling the truth, Valentina said quietly but firmly. Viktor took out his phone. I'll call an ambulance myself. And the local police too, he said. Police? Why? Gennady asked nervously. Domestic violence is serious, Viktor explained. What domestic violence? She fell by herself, Gennady protested. She fell because he tried to take her money, Tamara clarified. We all heard it happen. Within minutes, the ambulance arrived. The medical team carefully examined Valentina and quickly determined that she had a serious fracture of the tibia, with bone displacement. She needs urgent hospitalization and surgery, one of the paramedics said. They carefully lifted her onto a stretcher and carried her out of the apartment. Tamara Ivanovna accompanied her to the hospital as a witness to the incident. In the city hospital's trauma department, Dr. Igor Anatolyevich Ramashov, a middle-aged surgeon with sharp gray eyes and steady hands, was on duty. Her fracture is serious, he said after reviewing the x-rays. The bone is broken in 2 places, and the fragments are displaced. She will need complex surgery immediately. Valentina's face paled further, but she nodded, knowing the next few hours would be painful and critical. What are the treatment options? Valentina asked the doctor, her voice steady despite the pain in her leg. We can put the leg in a cast, the surgeon explained, but it will take about 4 months to heal, and the bone might heal crooked or stay deformed. Is there a better option? She asked. Yes, the doctor said. We can do an osteosynthesis, which means fixing the bone with metal plates. It will heal stronger and align properly. How much will that cost? Valentina asked. With modern implants, the operation costs 120,000 rubles, the doctor replied. That includes the surgery itself. If you choose a private hospital room with extra comfort and individual care, it will be more. The best plates, titanium, made in Germany, are even more expensive but last a lifetime. The full recovery, including rehab, will take about 1.5 years. And the total cost? She asked. About 200,000 rubles for everything, the doctor said. Valentina didn't hesitate. Do the best treatment. Money is not an issue. While preparations for the surgery were underway, a young police officer, Lieutenant Andrei Vladimirovich Fyodorov, came to her hospital room. He introduced himself politely and explained that he was investigating the incident. He asked questions and took notes, speaking calmly but seriously. Your husband claims that you fell by accident, he began. Valentina took a deep breath. He pushed me when he tried to take my bank card, she said quietly but firmly. And why did he want to take your card? The officer asked, raising an eyebrow. Valentina told the full story. The lottery win, her mother-in-law's constant demands, Gennady taking a loan using their apartment as collateral, and the pressure from relatives and neighbors. She spoke slowly, carefully, making sure every detail was clear. The officer nodded. I see. A family conflict over money, then. How are you planning to pay for your treatment? I have funds in my own account, she said. The same account my husband tried to access. The officer considered this. But as a spouse, he also has rights to family money, he said thoughtfully, almost like a gentle warning. Valentina paused. She hadn't thought about this. Formally, yes, but it's my personal lottery win, she said. Do you have access to his accounts? His salary account, he asked, leaning slightly forward. No, she replied. And would you want access? He asked carefully, with a subtle tone in his question. What are you suggesting? She asked, unsure. Nothing specific, the officer said quickly. I'm just explaining your rights. As a victim of family violence, you can demand compensation for your injuries. At the same time, as a spouse, you have the right to information about your husband's income. After the officer left, Valentina sat quietly, staring out the hospital window. She thought about everything that had happened, how quickly her life had changed, how deeply she had been betrayed, and the fact that she now had to fight for her safety and her money. For the first time, she realized the full scope of the challenge ahead. Not only did she need surgery and months of recovery, but she also had to navigate the tangled web of her husband, her mother-in-law, and their manipulations. Her mind raced, weighing the legal options, the medical choices, and the looming family battle. She knew one thing for certain. She wasn't going to back down. Gennady had caused her serious injury when he tried to forcefully take her money. Now, she was lying in the hospital, recovering from the pain and shock, while he probably thought he had won, thinking he would gain access to her lottery winnings. But Valentina had no intention of letting him do that. Not now, not ever. That evening, the hospital administrator came by her room. We need to make a prepayment for the surgery, he said. How much? Valentina asked. 70,000 rubles now, he replied. The rest after the operation. Valentina pulled out her phone and used her mobile banking app to transfer the money immediately. Then she asked for her laptop to be brought to her. I have important work to do, she said to the nurse who brought it. Her first task was to check all the family bank accounts online. She wanted to understand exactly where the money was and who could access it. As she scanned the accounts, she discovered something she hadn't known. Gennady didn't just have his salary account. He also had a savings account, one she had never been aware of. On that account, there were 370,000 rubles. As his wife and a victim of domestic violence, Valentina realized she had legal grounds to request the bank to temporarily block Gennady's accounts until the situation was clarified. She immediately called the bank's hotline and explained what had happened. We can temporarily restrict operations on your husband's accounts, the security officer said. But we will need some documents. What kind of documents? She asked. You'll need a hospital certificate showing your injury, a copy of the police report, and a statement from your local precinct officer, he explained. How much time do I have? She asked. You have 3 days to prepare the documents, the officer said, and then it will take about a week for us to process everything. Valentina did the math. She had 10 days, a short window to act, but enough if she planned carefully. She needed to move fast. Meanwhile, the surgery went smoothly. Surgeon Igor Anatolyevich installed 2 titanium plates and 8 screws to fix the broken bone. These are modern materials, he explained. They are biocompatible, so the body won't reject them. They will last for decades. Valentina asked, how much do these plates cost? The set cost 90,000 rubles, the doctor said. Expensive, but very effective. And when can I start walking again? She asked. After about a month with a cane, he replied. And rehabilitation? That will take another 2 months. You'll need massage, physiotherapy, and medical exercises. Valentina nodded. She already knew that even this part would cost money. What's the full cost? She asked. About 50,000 rubles for the complete course, the doctor said. Valentina leaned back and took a deep breath. She was in pain, but she was also determined. Her body would heal, and more importantly, She was taking the first steps to protect her money and her independence from the very people who had tried to control her life. Valentina added up all the costs, the surgery, treatment, and rehabilitation, and realized it would come to about 250,000 rubles. It was a lot of money, but she could afford it. She took a deep breath, knowing that paying for her own recovery was a step toward independence and security. While she was in the hospital, Gennady tried several times to get into her room, but the security staff had clear instructions not to let him in. Even Klavdia Markovna, furious as ever, tried to enter the ward, but the doors stayed firmly closed. "Tell that pretender," she shouted at the nurse, "we will not forget her cruelty. Because of her, our son got sick, and she's just lying here, pampering herself like a lady of leisure." Valentina ignored the chaos outside her door and focused on getting stronger. On the third day after the surgery, her lawyer, Stanislav Mihailovich, came to see her. He had been recommended by the police investigator handling the case. "This is an interesting case," he said after reviewing all the documents. "Your husband is indeed hiding income. The money in his savings account was not declared when he applied for the loan. That is very important," he explained. Valentina listened carefully. "What does this give me?" she asked. "You have the right to claim compensation for moral damages and recover the financial losses caused by his actions. In addition, we can request the bank to temporarily block his accounts." "For how long?" she asked. 3 to 4 months, until the court hears the case," the lawyer replied. Valentina pictured Gennady approaching the ATM, trying to withdraw money, only to find his accounts blocked. A small smile tugged at her lips. "Go ahead," she said firmly. "Block his accounts." "There's another point," the lawyer continued. "As a victim of domestic violence, you have the right to priority for alimony and financial compensation." "In what amount?" she asked. "Up to half of all the defendant's income, including his salary and any savings." Valentina felt a wave of relief. Finally, there was a legal way to protect herself and her future. By the 5th day after the surgery, Valentina could already move around using crutches. Her first priority was to go to the bank and start the process of blocking her husband's accounts. The bank security officer examined the documents carefully, the hospital certificate, the police report, and other supporting papers. "Family violence with serious bodily harm," she read aloud. "There is sufficient grounds to block the accounts." "For how long?" Valentina asked. "Initially for 1 month," the officer replied. Valentina nodded. Step by step, she was taking control, not just of her finances, but of her life. Even in the middle of pain and betrayal, she felt stronger than ever, determined to secure her future and protect herself from those who had tried to manipulate and harm her. "Later, we can extend the block for up to 6 months, the bank officer explained. "During that time, you can withdraw money for medical treatment as much as you need. Within reasonable limits, of course," she added. "You have all the medical documents, so there won't be any problem." "Good," Valentina said, feeling a little relief. "And I also need detailed information on my husband's account activity for the past 3 years. I need it for the court case." "Of course," the officer replied. "We'll prepare a full statement for you." Soon, Valentina received a detailed report of Gennady's financial activity. As she read through it, her heart sank. The reality was far worse than she had imagined. Over the past 3 years, Gennady had secretly transferred more than 500,000 rubles to his mother. He had taken high-interest microloans, borrowed money from colleagues, and even sold her gold jewelry, gifts from her parents. Every ruble went straight to Klavdia Markovna. Now Valentina understood the full extent of the deception. Her husband wasn't just helping his mother. He had been systematically stealing from the family, hiding income, and spending shared property without her knowledge. On the 6th day of her hospital stay, the 8th major twist in this saga happened. Valentina was sitting in her hospital room, sorting through documents, when the nurse said, "There's a representative from the bank here to see you." An older woman in a sharp suit entered the room, carrying a folder full of papers. "Good afternoon," the woman introduced herself. "Elena Viktorovna Savelyeva, Financial Security Department. We have some questions about the transactions on your account." "What transactions?" Valentina asked, curious. The large deposit 3 months ago, 3 million rubles from a lottery company. And? Valentina asked, trying to stay calm. The sending company is now under investigation. There are suspicions of fraud. Valentina felt her heart skip a beat. That meant the money she had won might have come from illegal activity. We are required to freeze your account until the investigation is complete, the officer continued. For how long? Valentina asked, her voice trembling. About 6 months, until the investigation is finished, the officer replied. Valentina felt the floor disappear beneath her. Her world seemed to crumble. But I've already spent some of the money on medical treatment, she said quickly. How much? The officer asked. 200,000 rubles. That amount will be counted as legitimate expenses, the officer said. But the rest of the money will be unavailable until the investigation concludes. And if the money turns out to be legitimate? Valentina asked, hope flickering in her chest. Then the funds will be returned to you, with interest for the time they were frozen, the officer explained. And if it isn't? Valentina asked quietly. Then the money will be seized, the officer said firmly. Valentina sank back in her chair, overwhelmed. First, her husband tried to steal from her. Then the law itself seemed to trap her, freezing her winnings and leaving her unsure if she would ever get them back. She realized she would need all her courage, determination, and patience to fight through the months ahead. After the bank officer left, Valentina sat in the hospital room, frozen and silent. Her mind was a whirlwind. The money, the very reason her family had fallen apart, might have been illegal. That meant that all the conflict, all the struggles, all the fights, could have been for nothing. Her hands trembled as she thought of Gennady's hidden accounts, the money he had secretly sent to his mother, and all the lies he had told. Even if the lottery winnings were gone, Valentina realized one thing: justice had to be served. Someone had to be held accountable for the deception, the theft, and the harm caused. On the 7th day, the 9th and final twist in this long saga arrived. Valentina's room door opened, and familiar faces entered, representatives from the National Lottery. But their news was completely different this time. Good afternoon, one of them said politely. We are here regarding your winning lottery ticket. I know. It was frozen, Valentina said cautiously. Exactly, the lottery representative nodded. The investigation is complete. We have results. Valentina's heart sank. What happened? Was the win invalid? The representative spoke calmly. Unfortunately, yes. The lottery draw was found to have been conducted with violations. The winnings are invalid and must be returned to the state. Her stomach dropped. 3 million rubles, all gone? But, the representative continued, we have taken into account your losses. Any damage you suffered because of this winning, especially the injuries caused during the family conflict over the money, will be compensated. Valentina's eyes widened. How do you know about my injuries? The police informed us, the representative explained. They connected the family conflict with the lottery winnings. We carefully reviewed all the circumstances of your case. And what does the law say? She asked, leaning forward. If an invalid lottery win causes harm to a person, the lottery organization must compensate that person for damages, the representative said. Valentina quickly did the math in her head. How much compensation can I get? For your situation, the representative replied, 500,000 rubles for medical expenses, plus an additional 300,000 rubles for moral damages. 800,000 rubles. More than she had spent on her treatment. And this money would be hers, legally, undeniably hers. And my husband? She asked. Does he get anything? The representative shook her head. No. He will be fined for causing bodily harm with selfish intent, 100,000 rubles to be paid to the victim. Valentina felt a surge of relief. After months of stress, betrayal, and fear, she would finally receive justice. Almost 1 million rubles in compensation, clean, rightful money. On the 10th day, Valentina was discharged from the hospital. Her leg had healed well. She would need crutches for another 3 weeks before she could switch to a cane. But this time, she didn't go home. She wasn't ready to face the house where so much deceit and pain had taken place. Instead, she took a deep breath, focusing on the future, on reclaiming her life, her independence, and the peace she deserved. Finally, after everything, she felt that justice, at last, was on her side. Valentina rented a 2-room apartment in a new, quiet neighborhood and moved in. For the first time in months, she felt a small sense of peace. She immediately sent Gennady a formal notice of divorce through her lawyer. The very next day, her lawyer, Stanislav Mihailovich, called with interesting news. "Your husband tried to withdraw money from the bank account," he said. "And?" Valentina asked, heart racing. The ATM displayed a message. "The account is blocked by court order." Valentina smiled, imagining Gennady's reaction. "And how did he react?" she asked eagerly. Stanislav chuckled. "He ran straight to the bank, yelling and demanding explanations. At first, he didn't believe it. Then he started shouting that it was unfair. Eventually, the security guards had to escort him out." Valentina could picture him perfectly, angry, confused, helpless. She remembered everything, how he had broken her leg just because she refused to hand over the 3 million rubles she had won in the lottery to his mother. And now, when he tried to withdraw his salary the next day, he saw the screen flash. Account blocked by court order. For the first time, justice was catching up with him. A week later, the court summons arrived. Gennady had filed for divorce and claimed the division of property. He demanded that the court lift the block on his accounts and declare that Valentina's actions had been wrong. Valentina didn't hesitate. She filed a counterclaim. She demanded compensation for moral damages, reimbursement for medical expenses, alimony during her recovery period, and a fair division of property that accounted for her husband's hidden income. The court case lasted 4 months. During this time, Gennady began to look worn out and older than his years. Without access to money, he had gone into debt and struggled just to live day to day. Klavdia Markovna, his mother, attended every hearing, sitting in the courtroom with a stone-cold expression. Her presence was meant to intimidate, but Valentina refused to be shaken. Witnesses confirmed the facts of family violence. Medical examinations verified the severity of Valentina's injuries. Bank records showed the systematic hiding of income and the misuse of family funds. Each piece of evidence painted a clear picture. Gennady and his mother had tried to manipulate, control, and exploit Valentina for money, but now the law and the truth were on her side. By the end of the trial, it was obvious who had been right all along. Valentina, hurt but unbroken, had taken back her life step by step, proving that courage, persistence, and careful planning could overcome deceit, betrayal, and greed. The court's decision was harsh for Gennady. The divorce was finalized, with the division of property heavily favoring Valentina, the injured party. On top of that, the court ordered him to pay 400,000 rubles as compensation for moral damage, 250,000 rubles to cover medical expenses, and 50,000 rubles in alimony during her recovery period. The court also included 30,000 rubles to cover legal fees. In total, Gennady had to pay 730,000 rubles. On top of that, Valentina received 800,000 rubles in compensation from the lottery. In the end, she came out with a total of 1.53 million rubles, far more than she had spent on her treatment, though still less than the mythical 3 million rubles that had started the whole nightmare. For Gennady, the consequences were severe. He had to sell his personal savings, take out multiple loans, and borrow money from everyone he knew. The apartment he had mortgaged for his mother's renovation had to be sold to pay off bank debts. Klavdia Markovna, his mother, remained in her old apartment, never receiving the promised renovation she had dreamed about. Even their son, Artem, felt the ripple effects of the financial chaos as Gennady's debts left the family struggling in new ways. 6 months after the divorce, Valentina had fully recovered. Her leg no longer hurt, and she didn't need crutches at all. She started a new job as chief accountant at a large trading company, with a salary double what she had earned before. By court decision, Artem stayed with his mother. The teenager struggled at first with the divorce, missing his father, but over time, he adapted to their new life. Valentina worked hard to make up for his father's absence, giving him love, attention, and stability. Gennady tried several times to repair the relationship. He showed up at her new apartment, called her, apologized, and even promised he would start over. He swore that he would never listen to his mother again, that he would be a better husband and father. But Valentina remained firm. Trust had been broken forever. A man who had raised his hand against her, motivated by greed, could never be her life partner again. For the first time in years, she felt free. Free from fear, free from manipulation, and finally, free to build a life for herself and her son on her own terms. "You know I love you," he said during one of their phone conversations. "If you really loved me, you wouldn't have broken my leg," Valentina replied. It was in a moment of anger. He tried to justify. "I didn't mean it. I wanted the best, but I got what I deserved." "Valia, please give us another chance," he pleaded. "There are no more chances," she said firmly. Even Klavdia Markovna tried to intervene, though in her own way. She called their mutual acquaintances, spreading stories about how ungrateful and cold-hearted Valentina was. According to her, Valentina had ruined her son's life, left her grandson without a father, and all because of money. Money that, in reality, didn't even exist. But public opinion had shifted. The story of domestic violence created far more sympathy than the old rumors of a greedy daughter-in-law ever did. People began to see the truth. Neighbors from her old apartment, once judgmental, felt ashamed for their earlier attitudes. Tamara Ivanovna even came by personally to apologize. "We didn't realize it was so serious," she said. "We thought it was just a normal family quarrel." Did Klavdia Markovna ever tell people how her son was stealing from the family? Valentina asked. "No, we only found out after the trial," Tamara Ivanovna admitted. Even her old colleagues had changed. Director Oleg Vladimirovich called, offering her old position back with a higher salary. "We jumped to conclusions," he admitted. "We didn't know all the facts and believed the gossip too quickly. I'm sorry. Let's forget the past." Valentina smiled. "I've forgotten, but I won't be going back to work there." A year after her injury, Valentina stood by the window of her new apartment, watching the snow cover the courtyard below. Her legs still ached a little in bad weather. The metal plates inside it were a constant reminder of what she had been through. In that year, her life had changed completely. She had gained financial independence, an interesting and challenging job, and the respect of her colleagues. Her son, Artem, had caught up in school, made new friends, and stopped longing for a father who had never been truly there. The lottery money that had once promised happiness had instead brought pain, betrayal, and destruction. But now, Valentina had something far more valuable than money: freedom, safety, and control over her own life. For the first time in years, she felt at peace. She had survived the worst, faced the lies, the violence, and the betrayal, and come out stronger on the other side. The past could no longer hurt her. Her future was hers to build. But those experiences, painful as they were, had given her the strength to start a new life and stand up for her dignity. Gennady never managed to pay off all his debts. He worked 2 jobs, lived in a tiny rented room, and struggled just to get by. Klavdia Markovna, his mother, suffered from her own health problems brought on by stress, high blood pressure, diabetes, and heart issues. The mother and son got what they deserved. Justice had been served, but the price had been high for everyone. The family was broken. Relationships were destroyed. Trust was gone. Money, both real and imagined, had shown the true nature of people. And that truth was not pretty. Valentina no longer blamed anyone. She didn't complain. She had made her choice, stood by her principles, and protected her dignity. She was living her life on her own terms. Alone but free. A year and a half after the divorce, Gennady came to her workplace. He looked thin, older, wearing cheap clothes and worn-out shoes. "Valia, I need your help," he said. "What kind of help?" she asked calmly. "My mother is in the hospital. She had a heart attack. We need money for her surgery." Valentina looked at her ex-husband carefully. "And what does that have to do with me? You know I don't have money to give you." "It's not about that. Valia, she could die. A heart attack can kill her. Especially those who spent their lives making other people's lives miserable, she said sharply. Gennady went pale. How can you say that? Easily. Your mother tried to rob me. You broke my leg protecting her interests. Now you deal with the consequences yourselves. But we were a family once, he tried. Yes, until money showed who everyone really is, she replied. He stayed for a moment, then turned and walked away. Valentina watched him go without a flicker of emotion. That chapter of her life was closed forever. That evening, she picked up her son from school. They went to the mall to buy him new sneakers. Artem had grown a lot in the past year, more serious, more mature. Mom, did Dad come to your work today? He asked in the car. How do you know? She asked. A classmate saw him. Said he looked really bad. Doesn't make you feel sorry for him? She asked. Valentina thought for a moment. No, I don't feel sorry for him. But sometimes, I feel sorry for myself. That's normal. He's your father, but what he did to you and me was very wrong. And you were right to leave him. Right. Artem nodded. Then I don't feel sorry for him either. They drove through the evening city, lights reflecting off the wet streets, and Valentina thought about how much her life had changed. A year ago, she had been a married woman with a quiet, predictable life. Now she was free, independent, and strong. Money had changed people, yes, but not always in a bad way. Sometimes it revealed the truth and gave the courage to stand up for it. The story of the lottery win had ended, but life went on. And for Valentina, life was good.